At the moment, there's been a lot of change in our industry. Every day feels like an entire year. That's how much change that we're seeing currently. I just wanted to speak with you about the questions that are most top of mind with landlords. Our valued landlords are ringing and emailing us on a regular basis, as well as tenants. The question that we are asked most and our property managers are asking is, what's happening with my tenant? Have you heard from my tenant, and is my tenant okay? And the typical answer on that we're coming back to clients with is probably not to sort of poke the bear. At the moment, just leave it as it is. I think there's an enormous amount of change that's happening in such a short amount of time. We don't need to introduce more change. So when we hear from your tenant, we will let you know what the feedback is from your tenants. Some actually have lost their jobs. I think there's about a 10% of Australian population, so probably 1 in 10 of tenants have lost their jobs. Where we have been inundated is that people are looking for incentives. So tenants are looking for a reason for their rent to be reviewed or delayed or in that shape or form. Now, what we are typically coming back to our tenants and saying is that government legislation will change in relation to that. It has changed a little bit. So I have sent out some regular correspondence every 7 days, and on that regular correspondence that I'm sending out every 7 days, the main change that I did see was that basically we can't remove a tenant out of a property for the next 6 months while we're going through what we're going through. Now, that doesn't mean that money's not going to be paid. It doesn't mean that necessarily your tenant's in trouble. But I think the message from a lot of tenants that have called are, what are you going to do for me in this period? And the answer is, at the moment, we have a contract, we have an agreement, we need you to pay. Now, in the event where there's a circumstance where there's real hardship, the government has sent out $130 billion into our economy to support the people that are in hardship. So there's a lot of things in place, a lot of triggers that are in place that tenants can pull to help them out through this period. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be with their landlord. The government's put a lot of provisions in place to help people through. But we've got to be compassionate and we've got to work together through this period. The second thing that landlords are calling up about is asking about, can I do something? So landlords are actually insisting in some circumstances that they do something just for the cause. That's their bit that they'd like to do. If we do anything, we like to take an approach of a one-off approach, which can help the tenant over a 2 or 4 week period, rather than putting in something in place permanently, which actually needs a notice period to put the rent back to its regular level. So that's the difference between a reduction and a rebate. So sometimes a landlord will say, look, just send $100 rebate our tenant's way as a gesture of good faith. That goes a long way, rather than, I'd like to change the rent by $20 over the next 3 months or 6 months, because then you're going to need another 2 months on top of that as a notice period for that rent to go back up. And you don't know, it may actually get worse with COVID, or it may very quickly, and it may get better very quickly. So I really like that approach of just doing a one-off payment towards your tenant. But I would say that would probably be less than 95% of our landlords out there. Most of our landlords realise that even if they have deferred payment with their bank, they don't have to pay $1 today, they can pay that $1 in 6 months' time, they still have to pay that $1. So they're saying, why, with all the incentives out there, why should I take a hit on the chin from the tenant when I'm not getting it, when my bank is not taking a hit on the chin at all? Now, we're here working for you. You direct us on how you'd like us to look after your tenant in these circumstances. But in any government incentive, any government speech that's been out there from our Prime Minister, he has made no mention of rent reductions. It's all about working with your tenant. and there are a lot of incentives out there, as I mentioned. I hope this piece has helped you, and definitely if there's any change, I'll let you know straight away. So the first piece of change that we had to go through, I did let you know, and the next piece of change I think is probably going to be about 48 hours time, and that's when our government's going to handle residential payments and what's going to be happening there, if there are any changes. But I do have to say, I think, I'm not a political person, but I think our government's been doing an excellent job, and the great thing is that we are all in this together, and I think so far Australians have proven to be absolute champions through this. So cheers guys, see ya.